Welcome back to Secrets Behind the Stars, the cozy corner where the glossy sheen of fame gives way to pulse, breath, and the tremors nobody sees. Today we're not just recounting a rumor, we're stepping straight into the aftermath of a love that once seemed tailor-made for forever, a future mapped out to end at the altar yet scattered in a matter of days. We're looking into the face of a man who kept the world at arm's length for years and has now chosen to speak from the softest, most fragile part of himself. Before we journey through this maze of tenderness and rupture, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell, and, if our deep dives matter to you, consider joining as a member. Your support lights the path we walk together. Now, let's turn to Erkan Meriç. For so long, the image built around him felt carved out of something cold and immaculate. Devastatingly handsome, surgically disciplined, and impervious to the noise. He seemed to navigate show business like a seasoned swimmer in stormy waters, letting the waves slam but never swallowing a breath of drama. He treasured silence, guarded his inner life, and wore privacy like armor. Yet in the last few days, that armor has split. The careful mask is gone, and the man underneath is unmistakably human, vulnerable, honest, and wounded. In what sounded less like a statement and more like a candlelit confession, Erkan opened up about the unraveling of his relationship with Hazal Subaşı. It wasn't the tidy request for privacy we've all seen 1,000 times. It was closer to a tremor let loose from the core, a voice aglow with what-ifs, a man admitting that he went all in and watched the table collapse. To grasp how dramatic this fall feels, you have to recognize how high he had climbed. About 5 months ago, the guarded gates of his heart seemed to part for Hazal. To the outside world, their connection looked like a modern fable about balance, two busy actors finding a sacred rhythm in the chaos of the set and the spotlight. Their moments together glowed, their laughter felt unforced, and their affection suggested roots rather than decoration. This didn't read like a weekend whirlwind, it felt like architecture. But the author of life rarely asks for our notes. The faint rustle of trouble that fans tried to dismiss as background noise swelled into a roar, and the verdict became impossible to escape. It's over, and what's left behind isn't merely confusion, but devastation. What makes this break more than a headline is the depth of Erkan's devotion. In his own words, he wasn't passing time or collecting memories. He was building a life. The idea of marriage wasn't theoretical, it had stepped into focus. You can easily imagine him rehearsing the words, weighing the ring, feeling the future reach for his hand. He wasn't dipping a toe into possibility. He had already leaped. And then came the detail that curled the room into silence. Erkan spoke about fatherhood. He admitted he had shared with Hazal the most sacred map in his heart, the dream of becoming a father, not someday in a vague, glittering horizon, but soon enough to touch. At a moment when career triumphs were stacking up and his popularity could have been a shield against any need for closeness, he was instead looking toward the quiet heroism of family. He saw Hazal not simply as a partner, but as the future mother of his children. That kind of trust isn't ordinary, it's a surrender that only the truly hopeful can risk. Those who were present say his voice thinned when he reached this point, as if the syllables themselves were heavy with memories that hadn't happened yet. Secrets behind the stars family, pause with me. A leading man speaking so plainly about marriage and fatherhood, only to watch the scaffolding drop, isn't something we hear every day. Does this openness make him stronger in your eyes, or does it leave him painfully exposed in an industry that preys on vulnerability? And who do you think could help him put one foot in front of the other? Maybe a colleague who understands the long hours and paparazzi noise. Share your thoughts below, and if you want to sustain these thoughtful conversations, hit like and consider joining as a member for exclusive content. Erkan's candor didn't stop there. He revealed that he defended this love against doubts coming from the people who knew him before fame did, his family. He shielded his relationship with Hazal, believing that what they had would justify the choice. Anyone who has stood between their partner and their parents knows the particular ache of that gamble. When the future dissolves, you're left with the echo of warnings you ignored. Erkan stood up for the woman he loved, and when the dust settled, he felt alone. It isn't just heartbreak. It's a humiliation you carry in your chest, the sting of having fought a quiet war that ended without a victory to show for it. He describes the breaking point not as a long, steady decline, but as a clean, cruel fracture. The shift came with distance. According to him, the change arrived when Hazal returned to her usual world, as if crossing a border that rewrote the rules. One day they were weaving plans, the next he felt the warmth blow out like a candle. As he tells it, while he was laying bricks for a home they would share, she was stepping into a parallel story that didn't include those same walls. The shock sits not just in the ending itself, but in the discovery that the intensity of love wasn't matched on both sides. That kind of dissonance isn't a quiet drift, it's an earthquake beneath a life you thought was solid. Since then, Erkan has drawn a hard line. There is no promise of a reunion, no soft door left ajar. He says he cannot forgive. Not out of spite, but because he needs to honor the honesty with which he loved. He knows that if he allowed a return, he would be inviting the same disregard back into his garden. So the gates are shut. He will sit with the ache rather than bargain with it. It's the choice of someone who refuses to turn his heart into a place where carelessness could flourish again. Behind the scenes, word is already moving from set to set. This is about to change his work. In film and television, there's a hard truth nobody likes but everyone respects: great art often drinks from the well of real pain. Erkan is back to work, not as the careful star he used to be, but as a man who now knows how it feels to lose the picture he hung on his wall. Producers whisper that a new register is coming, something darker and truer, the kind of depth that can't be taught in a workshop. He'll pour what he's living into characters that need that cracked light. The boy who adored the storybook ending has stepped aside. What stands in his place is a man who comprehends why fairy tales need shadows to make their glow believable. What about Hazal? Erkan hasn't accused, he hasn't dramatized with insults, and he hasn't invited a spectacle. The closest he gets to pointing a finger is in how he describes that abrupt turn when distance entered the room. He's choosing to let the facts speak in the spaces between his sentences. Those who love them as a couple are processing the whiplash, wondering how two people who understood each other so fluently on set could lose that fluency off camera. Yet even in sorrow, his words hold a strange respect for what was. He doesn't deny the good. He simply can't live with how it ended. For fans who watched them grow from co-stars into something that looked like home, this is a collective heartbreak. But it's also a moment of rare honesty in a culture that polishes stories until they reflect nothing. Here is a star refusing to trivialize the loss by burying it in PR language. He is saying, "I loved loudly inside my chest, and it didn't save us." He is saying, "I wanted marriage and children, and I meant it." He is saying, "My family questioned this, and I chose love anyway." And now, he is saying, "To protect what remains of me, I have to close the book." He stands in the wreckage of plans he once could have narrated scene by scene. But he stands. That matters. The public, so often cast as a chorus of criticism, has circled around him with something softer: empathy. They hear the thinness in his voice. They see the man who never wanted to make a spectacle of his life finally letting the curtains part an inch. He looks at a future that doesn't resemble the timeline he sketched, and he chooses to walk toward it anyway, one slow day at a time, one breath after the next. Is this the end of the story? No. It's the end of a certain innocence, the confidence that love, when spoken clearly and offered completely, will always be received the same way. What follows is something tougher and more human: the rebuilding of trust, the careful return to risk, the courage to love differently. And for Erkan, the screen now has a chance to catch the echo of what he's learned. The roles coming his way may find a man whose eyes carry a little more night and a lot more truth. The audience will feel it, because pain like this leaves a signature that cannot be forged. Tell us what you think. Can love survive a wound this deep? Should he forgive, or is self-preservation the last honest act in this chapter? Share your thoughts below, and if this story touched you, pass it along to someone who needs to hear that even our brightest stars bleed. Like, subscribe, and take a moment to hit the join button to lift up this community that listens when hearts are breaking. Thank you for being with us, here at Secrets Behind the Stars. Until we meet again, protect your light, and be gentle with your own tender places.